Welcome in. It is the Wednesday, June 18th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. Yesterday was a Tuesday. We had a GM in the NFL once again on the show. It was Arizona Cardinals GM Monty Ossenford. Ben Allen is on the screen right now in the background from an undisclosed location. The interview is right there. That's pretty cool. But if you have not seen it yet, go back one episode, go check it out. A really, really great discussion with one of the rising teams in the NFL. Monty has done a pretty good job there, making the team go from one of the older teams when he got there to now being one of the younger teams in the NFL. They doubled their win total last year, and they definitely feel like a team on the rise. People might have forgotten, but they were in first place after week 11 last year in the NFC West. So a team to keep an eye on for sure, and a really, really great discussion with him. As for today here on the show, we mentioned last week, most of the NFL is already on vacation. A few teams are doing their mini camp this week. That includes the Giants, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Rams, who are in Hawaii and having some fun there. But they all had their mini camps here going on this week, and we're going to talk a little bit about those teams a little bit more here on the show as well. Ben, what is going on? It's great to see you from this undisclosed location.
We can disclose a little bit of it. I am out in western Kansas, which is not quite as luxurious as Hawaii sounds right now, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to take it as it comes. Let's go ahead and start off with my favorite team, though, because any opportunity there is to talk about Lamar Jackson, I'm game for. And thankfully, we have a reason to today, because he spoke to the media on Tuesday and he covered a variety of things, the most notably being that he would really, really like for the Ravens to go after Jaire Alexander, who was recently cut by the Packers. Obviously, having another cornerback step into that room would really help bolster that secondary. He also talked about the contract extension stuff like a little bit. He didn't really want to get into it, but he did say that highest paid player in the NFL sounds good, which understandably why. And my biggest thing, though, is just like, what are the biggest takeaways you had from his comments made?
Well, I've said this before here on the show. Usually, whenever quarterbacks speak to the media, it's pretty boring. They just say all the regular quarterback stuff. Lamar is one of my favorite ones whenever he speaks, because he's open, he's fun, he'll say whatever he thinks, and it's never anything controversial, but it's like an actual, answer. It's fun. So I like listening to Lamar Jackson press conferences, and that's kind of what happened here yesterday when he spoke to the media. So we'll start with some of the things that you mentioned. The Jaire Alexander thing, a reporter mentioned, hey, one of your college teammates was just released. Would you want him here in Baltimore? He was like, Eric DeCosta, go bring him in right now. I love my guys in Baltimore. I love the corners we have, but why not bring him in as well? Of course, this is a team that, they lost a player like a Brandon Stevens here this offseason. They have some young guys who they've drafted over the last couple of years, but would be a classic Baltimore Ravens signing, getting a player in June, July, who's going to help the team come September, October. They do it kind of every year. We've mentioned the David Clowney signings, the Kyle Van Noy signings. They just added a Joseph Noboom on the offensive line a couple of weeks ago, who I guarantee you is going to have a role on this team, maybe as a swing tackle. So this is what Eric DeCosta does. It would make sense if they go out there and do it. And, Lamar mentioned he's spoken to Jaire about potentially coming to Baltimore. So we will be keeping an eye on that. He also spoke about a number of other topics, including the fact that he has been enjoying the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is in Baltimore. The way he talks about DeAndre Hopkins, he makes it sound like it's prime DeAndre Hopkins. He's like, I threw a pass today in practice, and he went up and got it, and I was like, how did he just do that? So I'm not saying DeAndre Hopkins is going to be prime DeAndre this year, but having him with Zay Flowers, with Rashad Bateman, with Isaiah Likely, with Mark Andrews, I mean, maybe he could be a guy who could become a target for this offense this year. And he mentioned that DeAndre was one of the guys he was kind of advocating for a couple of years ago when it was either signing Odell Beckham Jr. or trading for Hopkins. They signed OBJ, but he was the other one, and now they get him here in 2025. He also called out everybody who called out Mark Andrews this offseason for obviously that drop in the game versus the Buffalo Bills. He took some blame on his own, saying if I didn't throw that dumb interception in the game, we probably would have won the game as well. So stop hating on Mark Andrews. He's a great player. He's done a lot of great things in this league. And listen, Mark, at one point this offseason, he was in trade talks. He was a cut candidate. But like Eric DeCosta, the GM, said, we're a better team with Mark on the team, and they're going to keep him here moving forward. Isaiah Likely is still going to have a big role. He's still an extension candidate this offseason, and we'll see what they do with him. Lastly, you mentioned the contract. he was very straightforward with reporters. I am not talking in the media about the contract, but he still has 2 more years left on his deal after this season. But from a cash flow perspective, it starts going down. From a cap standpoint, the way the Ravens structured it, his cap numbers the next 2 years after this year, it's $70+ million. So the easiest way to bring that down is by doing an extension. When a reporter mentioned that John Harbaugh said earlier this offseason that whenever a deal gets done, he will become the highest paid quarterback in football. Like you said, Ben, he said, that sounds good to me. So it would have to break the Dak Prescott $60 million per year. Like we know from the last time, he does not have an agent. He negotiates himself. He has his mother. He has a couple of lawyers, some advisors. So those things are always a unique situation, but it's definitely an extension to watch over here in Baltimore if they get it done or they push it over to next year. Lamar Jackson does not like negotiating during the season, even though the Baltimore Ravens as an organization are okay with it. But we know they have a bunch of other extensions as well coming up over here with Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Lindenbaum, Marlon Humphrey potentially, and of course is Lamar Jackson one. So a lot of business to get done in Baltimore. They already did Rashad Bateman. They already did Derrick Henry, but a lot more to come, and we'll see if Lamar Jackson is part of that.
Well, that's not the only extension we need to talk about. We got to go over to one of the Ravens' AFC rivals, that being the Kansas City Chiefs. Their star guard, Trey Smith, was lucky enough to become the highest paid guard in football this offseason with a $23.4 million franchise tag placed on him, although he probably wanted an extension. But the extension not being in place didn't stop him from showing up to workouts, mandatory minicamp. He skipped voluntary, but he's here now for mandatory minicamp. Deal's not in place yet. I'm sure $23.4 million is great. He's not complaining about that. But I imagine that a long-term deal really has to be the goal for him and probably for Kansas City as well. Where do you think they are right now with the potential deal? And do you anticipate being something that is done before the season is here?
So, first of all, I loved watching the Chiefs press conferences today, and Chris Jones, who, of course, a couple years ago held out and did not even play in the first game of the year, was like, Trey Smith, good job not taking my advice because what I did a couple years ago was stupid. So that was funny to see. So Trey is there, like you said, and this is not something that you could wait until before the season starts. There's a deadline on this one because he was franchise tagged. So that deadline is July 15th. So a little less than a month away over here for Trey Smith. And the Chiefs have really a number of key players who are extension eligible. That includes Trent McDuffie. That includes George Karlaftis, who both just finished their third years in the NFL. They are both extension eligible as well. But from my understanding, their focus right now is going to start with Trey Smith. The franchise tag, it's a very big number. It obviously did reset the guard market, but whenever a deal will get done, and again, they're going to try really hard over here to get a deal done. And they tried before placing that franchise tag at the combine to get a deal done. They just couldn't really meet in the middle and find out a number, but they said they're going to revisit this one. So whenever that ends up happening, the deal is going to start with that $23 million franchise tag number. And essentially, the way franchise tags work, if you want to get an extension done, the extension has to be what a first tag would be plus what a second tag would be, and then you work off the extension based on that. So that's essentially the starting point for an extension with Trey Smith. But keep in mind, this is a team that really wanted to keep him. This is a team that realized we already extended Creed Humphrey. We can't extend Joe Tooney and Trey Smith, so they moved on from Tooney. And of course, they got younger by, signing a Jalen Moore to a little bit of a moderate deal, 2 years, $30 million. And then, of course, drafting Josh Simmons as well there in the first round. So they had to move some pieces around over here on the offensive line to make it all work. But their goal is to get a deal done with Trey Smith, and they're going to work really hard on getting that deal done. And essentially, if they do get that deal done, his cap number right now is the franchise tag number. It's a very high number, $23 million. So if you want to bring that down, the easiest way to do it, again, is by doing an extension. So those talks are going to ramp up over here in the next few weeks. And if they want to, they could take it all the way down to the July 15th deadline, but I would imagine they prefer not to. But they're going to try really hard to get a deal done. My understanding from both sides is they're motivated to get a deal done before that deadline hits.
Another big move taking place this week. some might say a thicker kicker move to be exact. Harrison Mavis, the UFL's kicking superstar, is going to be getting his second shot in the NFL as it looks like he's going to be heading out to New York to be with the New York Jets for the forthcoming season. We've seen success with some of these kickers coming from the UFL, maybe NFL to UFL, back to the NFL. Mavis is obviously going to be a guy that is trying to take advantage of this second opportunity, make an impact in the league. There's been some guys at other positions that have had the opportunity to go back to the NFL, but I don't think they've been quite having as much of the track record as we've seen with the kickers. What do you think about this move, and what do you think in general about the UFL, their development and sending guys to the NFL, and then hopefully being able to create actual consistent play in which maybe it becomes a little bit like a feeder league to a more consistent basis?
Being a spring league, it is so difficult to bring the attention to the league. Like I saw the numbers, they were down this year for the UFL compared to the year before, just because there isn't much star power there when it comes to the players. But it is a great opportunity for players who maybe can't get to the NFL initially to try to get a second shot. And you mentioned the kicker. It's a very unique player in Harrison Mavis, the former Missouri kicker who was an undrafted free agent signing by the Carolina Panthers. You never see a kicker who's 242 pounds, but that is what Harrison Mavis is. But he was really good for the Stallions, where he was 20 of 21 on field goals this past year. He had an SEC record for when he was there at Missouri for one of his field goals. I believe it was 56 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So he definitely has a leg. And the reason I want to bring him up primarily here is because probably the biggest success when it comes to the UFL to the NFL has been at that position, the kicker position, where Brandon Aubrey in Dallas is going to become the highest paid kicker in the NFL, possibly as early as this offseason. Jake Bates was an unbelievable kicker last year for the Detroit Lions. Both those guys came from the UFL. So the Jets last year had a lot of struggles with Greg Zuerlein, who has since been released. Maybe Mavis does become the guy for them. Maybe it's somebody else, but it's another opportunity for these players to get back into the NFL and show what they could do. And all 32 NFL teams, they have scouts who, of course, do NFL team scouting, they do college scouting. They now also have CFL and UFL and all these other spring leagues where they're checking out these players and watching the film and being like, hey, could we add these guys to our 90-man roster? I think about, PJ Walker and Taylor Heineke. Those are quarterbacks who had some success in those spring leagues, ended up in the NFL and having success. Heineke is still a backup in the NFL right now with the Chargers. Bryce Perkins, who was a quarterback for the Rams, he was the UFL MVP this year, and he's looking to get back into it. He just hired an agent who is pretty well known around the NFL, who's going to try to get him an opportunity. So these are great opportunities here for the NFL. We had a running back signing with the Falcons the other day coming over from the UFL. There are signings happening right now with these guys because rosters are 90 players. Not every team right now has 90 guys. Eventually, once training camp hits, those rosters will be filled to the max. And of course, by late August, it's got to go back down to 53, and there's a practice squad of 16 players. But this is a shot to be at training camp and try to make a roster, at the very least, at a practice squad spot. And the UFL is a great way of doing it. I just hope it doesn't die down because the reality is when it comes to just television ratings and just people watching, it's not really in the greatest spot right now, but it's definitely great for all these players who can't make the NFL initially, go out there and work on their craft and be with these coaches and have some game action. Eventually, they are getting signed by NFL teams and having another shot, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think any extra players, the opportunity to have these developmental types of leagues, especially with not having like an NFL Europe now, it's good. We're seeing these players, the IPP guys, have an opportunity, to work a lot of times with the practice squad guys. The teams can go out there and bring one in and just see what they're made of. And I think that that's good. Obviously, the UFL, you're seeing guys that competed at a high level often in college. And in some cases, some guys have seen the NFL field. It's a good thing. I think any opportunity that we can have to try to see who more of these guys are and really, build them up over time, it's got to be nothing but a net positive for the NFL, especially if they don't have to do anything with it.
That's the reality of it. The reason why NFL Europe didn't work was because the NFL was not making money out of it. That's why it was, destroyed. But it was great for players because a lot of guys went there and tried to work on their craft. But again, the league didn't make money. They go to these owners' meetings, they show them the revenue report, and then this is in the red. It's like, why do we need to get rid of it, right? The UFL, the NFL doesn't really have much involvement when it comes to paying for the league. That is all done by those investors, Dwayne Johnson, all those other people. And the NFL is like, cool, we have a free minor league system here that players are coming in. So the NFL is cool with that. But like I said before, I hope it survives. Again, I feel like people like me and these big, reporters out there should probably talk about it more. I mean, I don't. I probably should, post their clips and post their highlights and whatever because it should get more attention. And frankly, I don't do it. But I just wish it ends up, surviving here as the years go on over here. Because this past year, I just did see the numbers out there, and it did go down. But it's definitely great for these players, and we'll see what ends up happening here in the future. Ben, you got me distracted with a new visitor we have over here.
Yeah, this is what happens when you travel. The dog just stays around. So, Archie, this is Archie, my Pomeranian mixed with something else that we probably found in the garbage or something mixed in with him. He decided that it is time to join me on the podcast. So that means it is time to go. So if you guys haven't already, if you're on YouTube, look over my shoulder, go watch Monty Fort with Ari Meirov. Great conversation. I think it was 31 minutes when all was said and done. Discussed a lot of great things. His Marvin Harrison Jr. comments were excellent. His whole path to the NFL is just fun. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And Ari, unless there's anything else, let's get out of here. I'm going to go walk the dog.
That will do it here for our Wednesday, June 18 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here tomorrow morning to talk more about the NFL and whatever else happens around the league, and we will see you then.